Hello everyone, how are you today? Last week I left you a couple of articles and quick links about how the Bitcoin works, and our goal was to get a little bit of the knowledge how to deal with the Bitcoin. The basic stuff was to just learn a couple of terms and phrases that are similar in the blockchain and the Bitcoin as a very first implementation of the blockchain. And I'm pretty sure that if you didn't read this, this video will help you with really quick introduction to the Bitcoin. And if you did read this, this will summarize a little bit your knowledge about that. I also gave you a homework, which is pretty fine. This little example or the task to do was to install an interface for the Bitcoin node, set up this, switch to the testnet. I will explain you in the minute why switch it to the testnet, and then make a request a transaction and make a sample transaction for yourself. And I think we might start with installing the application, and during that I will explain all the terms that are necessary to work with the Bitcoin to you. So basically, if you want to start with the Bitcoin, it's easy enough to start with the interface that you can download from the bitcoin.org website. This is not the only node or the only interface available for now, because you can also use the another interfaces like the command line interface or any other interface. This is one of the most popular. Also, the websites are pretty cool, but for some reasons I have some troubles with trusting them. So I'm working with Linux. You can either download the package, RPM package, or the gzipped package from the website, or you can just add it to your repository, just like that. This will add an information about the new package, the Bitcoin core package, to your repository. Then you should run apt-get update to update all the information about the repository. And the very last thing is to install install Bitcore Qt, as I believe. Wait a second, you can try. Yes, Bitcoin Qt. Okay, so now it's installed and we're ready to run it. Bitcoin Qt. We can also run it from here, but I prefer to do that because of some options I put there before. And now it's a time to explain a little bit of what's happening at the very beginning. The splash screen that you're seeing right now is telling you that your node will download any kind of the information from the blockchain, and it can take a couple of hours or a couple of days, in the fact that you have already installed the application for the very first time. With the mainnet, which is the actual network that you would like to work with if you are dealing with the money, it will take about 3 days. With the testnet, it took me like an hour or less. The mainnet is basically the internet, the network that you're working on when you would like to deal with actual and real money, real Bitcoins. This is a network, main network, general network that is proposed to exchange Bitcoins, mine Bitcoins, or sell the Bitcoins, or even buy the Bitcoins for yourself. And those Bitcoins, and only those Bitcoins, have actual value. But Of course, for the testers or for the developers who are dealing and programming the blockchain application that are working with the blockchain, it would be so super hard to work with actual money and make actual transactions. So that's why there are two available networks in the Bitcoin network. The second network that is available for you is the testnet. It is basically proposed for the testing issues, and this is a full copy of however the main network works. Because if you would like to make a transaction in the test network, it will behave in the exact way like the main network. Besides that, it's pretty easy to get some money from it. And the simulation network, SimNet as I call it, is proposed for your locally run node and fully locally working network. You are in charge of everything what is happening in the network, so you are able to send a transaction, but it will be not mined until you will call a proper command on that. You can block the transaction, reject the transaction, mine the block, and whatever you will do will be available only on your local machine. It is highly effective during the programming work when you need to check what happens between each stage of the transaction life cycle. When you request a transaction, what will happen with your application, and you are not limited with the time that the next block is supposed to be mined. So in 10 minutes you have whenever time you need to check your application and debug it. And after that, in the SIM network, you are able to add the transaction to the blockchain or reject it and mine the block. So you are also able to check what happens if the transaction is mined, or when it is rejected, what happens from time to time, or if it's stuck in the blockchain for some reason, like too low fee or wrong data, unspent money, something like that. But basically today we are going to deal with the test network and our next approach will be to try to switch to the test network. To do it, we need to go to the options, open the configuration file, and add this little command. The very first splash screen can be omitted, and you don't need to wait for the fully synchronized blockchain on your local machine, because for the default option is the mainnet, and your node will be working with the mainnet. To switch to the testnet, you need to change the configuration file and just add this little line. If you would like to switch to the SIMnet, it is possible by putting the SIMnet is true command. And after you change something in your configuration file, you should restart your application. So that's the very first thing that you need to do. Now we're going to actually gather some bitcoins, free bitcoins in the testnet, because as you can see in the top left corner, I'm signed to the test network, and all the information from the blockchain are already synchronized on my computer. Usually it takes between 1 to 3 hours on the testnet and 1 to 3 days with the mainnet, because it's a little bit bigger. So my node, personal node, which is not mining yet, has opened a wallet for me with a couple of addresses, and if I click receive right now, I will open a new address. I will create a new address for me, because as we said during the last presentation last week, everything in the Bitcoin or in the blockchain is anonymous. So you need to be authenticated or identified only by the address. And if you would like to send money to somebody, this address needs to be unique. So we will catch it from a different point of view. We need to request some payment because we need to put this address into some external system to gather some bitcoins for us. So I will just click request payment. I don't care about the label because it's only for me. It will be stored only on my local machine, and it will never hit the network. Nobody will be able to see the label. It's only a thing that is visible on my local machine as the amount and the message. So basically I don't need to put that because the blockchain doesn't matter about that. And this will generate a very new unique address for myself or for this specific purpose, and for every single time it will be different. As you can see, there is DC at the very end, and the next time when I click it, it's A5, and the next, yeah, okay, let's copy it and gather some bitcoins. Testnet file Bitcoin testnet faucet. There are plenty of websites that deliver you can deliver you or send bitcoins to your address. The only thing you need to do is just paste your address and say that you're not a robot and click give me some bitcoins. Now we will receive an information about that. We have an incoming transaction, but it is not mined yet. We will not see the bitcoins on our account. It will be in the state pending. This might be very different, the same, because I requested another payment in before, but we can do it once again like that, and those values will be totally different. Give me some bitcoins. And now we will have more pending bitcoins, and that's totally free because we are still on the testnet. As you can see, I have almost one pending bitcoin which is not mined yet. We can see that on the external website. This is the address that sent me some bitcoins. As you can see, it's 0.325, and this is not confirmed yet. But the funny thing is, whenever you send a transaction to some other address, this address is not will not be the value of the bitcoins assigned to this address will be not decreased. A new address will be created with the difference between the incoming value and the outgoing value. So the owner of the address on the left side will be also the owner of the address on the right side. And right now, as you will see, the address on the left side will have the 0 bitcoins assigned to it, and two other addresses will have properly assigned value or the amount of the bitcoins with the only one transaction there. So basically that's how it works, and it might happen that you will have an address with a couple of dozens of incoming transactions, but if there will be an outgoing transaction, it will create a new address for you with new amount, and you will need to track the history back again to the previous address. As you can see, there is also the warning that this is especially the third version of the blockchain, of the testnet in the blockchain, because the previous versions were had a couple of issues with that. People tried to spend those money or exchange for real fiat currency, and they decided in the second version there was an issue that it was DDoSed and attacked by the hackers, because the hackers tried to just break the blockchain and try to add different techniques on that. So that's why they decided to get rid of the first and the second version of the testnet and create the third version, which is pretty stable right now. The same thing actually happened with the Ethereum. In the Ethereum, the testnet, there are a couple of testnets like the Robston or the Ringby, and they have different purposes, but most likely the Ringby is the newer version of the Robston. It's working like the testnet in the second version and in the third version. Probably in a couple of minutes, those transactions will be mined and added to the newest block. So the money will be moved from the pending status, because we have 0 confirmations for now, to the available until when the transactions will have at least 1 confirmation there, and we can check whatever happens there, because we can see for how long any of the blocks were not or were mined. We have 17 minutes. Probably the next block will be mined in 3 or 4 minutes, something like that. So we can talk about some other things. And you asked a couple of questions about that, how the amount of bitcoins assigned to the address is calculated, or to the account, or the exact question is how is the balance of Bitcoin address determined? And this is basically calculated from the incoming and outgoing transaction for the address, and the balance of Bitcoins for the specific account is determined by the formula, but simply by summing the balance of assigned addresses to the wallet. So you do not store any kind of the information about the sum or the balance of the bitcoins on your account or the address. You just take all the transactions from the ledger and add the incoming amounts and decrease it by the outgoing amounts. This is pretty easy stuff to do, and this is handled by the nodes and the applications by themselves. The another question you asked is Bitcoin is an open source and doesn't require permission for anyone to contribute to the code. But how does the community ensure quality? What's stopping me from quoting a Shakespeare passage in the middle of the code? Well, basically nothing stops you from that. But the only thing is Bitcoin, you might push the code to the Bitcoin node, but it will be only one node, and this is only an application or a piece of software that is communicating with the Bitcoin network. And the Bitcoin might be described not as a piece of software, but as a network. And if we consider it by a network, it can be described as only a description of the protocol, well-documented protocol. Because if you push something to the ledger, to the blockchain, everybody else who's working with the same blockchain need to accept your message. They need to accept your transaction or your change. And so at the very end, everybody needs to know their own the same language. They need to talk in the same language. If you change some words in the language or some rules, they will not accept your transaction. That's why it might be so easy to push something into the code, but whatever you push into the code, it really doesn't matter. Even if one of the nodes or one of the implementations of the nodes or piece of the software of the Bitcoin is opened and you are able to put something there, the community takes responsibility for the quality of this code and how the nodes within the network communicates between each other. So that happened in August last year, 2017, when when the most part of the community agreed on that there's something need to be changed within the blockchain. And they agreed on a couple of changes. The hardest thing to change was that the block will be no longer 1 megabit. The size of the block will be increased from 1 megabit to the 8 megabits, and so the people will be able to put more transactions into one block, and in the result the fee will be lower than it used to be at the very end of last year, and it was like a $20 per one transaction. That was a pretty high fee, even for the Bitcoin. Even if they agreed, the bigger part of the community agreed on that, it was impossible to upgrade every single node in the network to the SegWit 2.0 protocol. So they decided to hard fork, so just copy all the information from the ledger and create new Bitcoin Cash. And that's how Bitcoin Cash was created. A couple of bigger companies decided to just give some money from just copying information from the blockchain from the Bitcoin to the Bitcoin Cash and give the people money, but you know what happened. Now we have the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Cash living in the same area, and everybody is using both networks. It's not like we get rid of the Bitcoin, we just have another new cryptocurrency right now. So let me check if it was mined. The transactions probably were mined. Let's check that. Nope, this is not mined yet. So we are still waiting for the first confirmation until the transaction will be mined and added to the next block. During that, it will be added to the available, and let me check. And the number of confirmations will be increased with every another block that will be added on the top of the ledger. So in example, with the first block, when the transaction will be mined, the number of confirmation will equal 1 confirmation, and with another block mined to the ledger, there will be 2 confirmations for the block, even if you will not find this specific transaction in the second block. Funny thing about the next thing is how you can find the actual information about the block. So when you click the block number on the website or in the application, you will be able to also see what kind of the transactions are included into the block. So probably there is a couple of transactions in this specific block, and most of the blocks in the mainnet will have like 2,000 or 3,000 transactions, depend on the calculations and computation power required to compute the block. They will have 2,000 or 3,000 different transactions included into the block. The last thing you can have is to send money from your account to another account. You can put the hash address to which you would like to send some bitcoins. We will send 110 bitcoins, and the fee will be added from your account. Even if you will send the bitcoins to different addresses, it will be all collected to your wallet, and you do not need to take care about that if you have a proper amount of bitcoins on this specific address. You will send the bitcoins from the address where the transaction will come from. So use available balance or not. We'll just send some transaction sent, and you need to confirm that. And I moved the money from one address on my account to the another address, so the balance on my overall wallet should be the same right now. And we'll see another kind of the transaction at the very end that will be sent from a couple of addresses, different addresses, to the one address. If you will receive a couple of different transactions with the bitcoins, and you would like to send those bitcoins with the bigger amount to another address, so here is the address that will sum up with 4.4. Will sum from those addresses. You don't need to gather all bitcoins on one address. The wallet will take care about that to you. It will just add more addresses on the left side. They definitely all are assigned to the one wallet, and those bitcoins will be sent to the final address. Another kind of funny situation is when you compose your own transaction by yourself with the raw transaction and define the raw transaction, because you are able to define the same kind of address but send some amount of the bitcoins from one address, another amount of the bitcoins from another address, and another amount of bitcoins from the same address. And this is a funny thing when you are implementing payment methods with the Bitcoin, because you might just be aware of the first address and don't look at the another addresses. But the thing is, you should be able also you should also take care about this kind of the edge case when the user sends a little bit weird transaction like this. This is everything that I wanted you to know after this week, and the next week will be dedicated for doing basically the same stuff but from the command line. This will be really necessary to understand exactly how the transactions are working in the Bitcoin, and you will know about every step how the within the transaction life cycle. So see you next week.